what exactly is a trance gate? Well, it's pretty simple. Say that you have a sound that goes like me, and let's say that you want to give it a bit more complexity, more rhythm, more groove. Well, you just slap a trance gate on it and boom, instant dance floor hit. And so today we're going to explore 3 ways of achieving this effect basically for free. So if you're a beginner, this video will be useful for you, hopefully, but if you're not, if you're a bit more advanced, please stick around anyway, because I've got some tips and tricks that you might find quite cool. So yeah, let's get it started, shall we? Right, so the first free plugin that we're going to explore is the KHS or kilohertz trance gate. So this is part of a bigger bundle. The whole bundle is free. It's called Free Essential or something like that. And I'm going to make a video about the whole bundle someday, because these guys are awesome and I find myself using these plugins quite a lot. But anyway, I've got an instance of Vital right here. Let's hear what this synth sounds like without the trance gate on. Let's hear what it sounds like with the trance gate on. As you can hear, as soon as you put this on, you've got some more groove, some more rhythm, some more complexity. So basically what's happening here is that on the blue slots, the sound is going through, and on the grayed out slots, the sound is being gate kept. That is word or makes sense. Let's get more in depth with this particular plugin. So you see a number right here. This is the number of slots that you have available. It goes up to, I think, yeah, 64. Obviously you can also choose odd numbers like this, but at every bar you're gonna have nice offsets. So it's cool if you wanna achieve like some interesting, always changing kind of patterns. But most times I rather stick to, you know, a fixed bar. So let's just keep it back to 16. Also right here you have the resolution, which is different from the number of slots that you have here. It's basically, resolution is basically the speed. So if you go to 1/16th, it's going to go slower. In that case, the 16ths that you see here are going to be actual 16ths, if that makes sense. Let's say that you have the resolution back at 1/32nd and you have 16 slots. In a 1 bar measure, you're going to have 2 of these rotations. Let me just show you real quick. If you go to resolution of 1/16th in a 1 bar measure, you're going to have 1 rotation. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, so we explored the gate wheel and the number of steps and the resolution. We also have an envelope section right here. So if we turn the attack down, it's going to have a faster attack. If we turn the decay down and the sustain down and the release down, it's going to have a much snappier effect. As I turn these knobs up, the effect is going to be much more nuanced, because obviously every time we open the gate, it's going to stay open for longer. And if you turn the attack up, you're going to have a much smoother transition into the gate, if that makes sense. I really quite like the envelope section on the KHS trance gate, because by playing with it you get different grooves, you get different variations of the same groove, and you kind of move the accents that the trance gate will give you a bit forward or backward, just depending on what your attack is set to and your release as well. Because obviously if you think about it, you know, you have the gate at a certain point, but if you have, let's say, the attack all the way up or midway up, it just takes the effect, you know, a few milliseconds to get there. And you can say the same thing about the release. And also additionally you have the swing. So let's just hear the difference when I turn the swing kind of like 75%. basically it's 9 day. Let's just do something quite crazy like this. We get something really snappy. It's very straight, but if I turn the attack up and the release up and maybe the swing up again, you get a completely different effect. This is quite apparent when you use trance gate on a pad in conjunction with some drums. For example, if I play these drums that I just created, which feature kind of a triplet feel to it, and I just keep this particular set of values right here, it wouldn't sound very good. But let's hear what happens when I turn the swing up 75%, and maybe the attack as well, and the release as well. It's a completely different vibe, and I think it works quite well. The last thing that we need to talk about in terms of feature with trance gate is that you can actually store different patterns right here. For example, number 3 is completely different. And so this is quite useful when you are working in a project and you want to kind of switch it up at any point in time. The one thing that we have to keep in mind with this is that any of these information, the envelope, the resolution, the swing, or the mix, do not get stored in the preset. So basically, as you can see here, all you can store is basically the number of steps and which steps, you know, are blue and gray, but anything else will keep being just the same. It's kind of a global control. So before moving on to the next plugin, let me just say a couple more things about this one. You see here there's a mix knob. You might have noticed that when the effect is dry, it's quite loud, but when you turn the mix up, you do kind of lose a couple of dBs in volume, and there is a simple way that we can fix this. You just grab this, you group it, and you create a audio effect rack basically, and you can add a utility right after the trance gate. And what we're gonna do next, we're gonna go and open up the macros. We're gonna map the mix to macro number 1, and also the gain at the same macro. So the maximum gain that we're gonna achieve here is 8 dB, because I kind of calculated, I've done some trial and error before. It seems to attenuate. I mean, it really depends on what kind of pattern you're using and the envelope as well, but anything in the range of 6 to 9 to 10 dBs is what gets attenuated most times. So I'm just gonna choose max as 8 dB, and the minimum is going to be 0. So basically now when we turn the mix up, we also turn the gain up, as you can see. And as you can hear now, there is a kind of a volume match. So when the mix is all the way up, you don't lose a ton of volume basically. Yeah, I might have overdone it. It probably is 7 dB in this case, but again, it really depends on the pattern, and mostly it doesn't even really much depend on the pattern all that much. It actually depends on the envelope that you're using. I mean, if you're using something really quite snappy, it tends to cut out a lot of sound, and if you cut out a lot of sound, you might cut out a lot of volume. But in this case, it seems to be around 7 dB. Another thing that you might have noticed about this plugin is that it's not stereo. You can't use different patterns for the left channel as you would do for the right channel, but there is a way we can go around this problem, and we just double it in our audio effect rack, and we send one chain all the way to the left and the other one to the right. For example, let me just change the pattern on the right. And one other thing that we might need to do is check if the macros work on the macros already work on the second instance of our chain, and so everything is connected, but now we have a stereo trance gate. Right, and with that being said, let me just save this particular effect rack that I made. Let's call it Gate Chess Trance Gate Plus, if that makes sense. And you can download this particular patch as well as the whole of this project on my Patreon. And any of these plugins that are not native to Ableton, I will put the link in the description box below because they're free. You can go and download them on their own websites, and once you install them, they're pretty much going to show up in your session. So everything should run smoothly. Okay, so let's move on to our next plugin. And boy, this is a bit more complicated, as you can see. This is the AudioModern Gatelab, and as you can see, it's got lots of features. It's actually unbelievable that it's free. So thank you, AudioModern, for making this and 2 other plugins very similar to this available for free. It's pretty cool. So let's see what this synth sounds like without any effects first. And this is what it sounds like with the plugin turned on. There's a lot of stuff going on here, so let me just go ahead and select a kind of a blank preset so we can start from the bottom and work our way up this really cool plugin. So first of all, as you might have noticed, unlike the previous plugin, the Trance Gate, not only you can turn these lots on and off, but you can also decide the volume of each step. So this is a pretty cool feature. If you only want to use it as a standard, like classic old school gate, you can switch this button right here, and there you go. Every time you click on any of these lots, they just turn on and off. You can also decide the direction that the sequencer moves in, so you can go forward, you can go backward, you can go forward and backwards. And then right next to it you have a big green button, which is just a randomizer. So if you press this, we have a randomized sequence. And as you can see, it also randomized the direction. These 3 little buttons, I think they just decide the intensity with which the randomized button will fill up your slots. So if you have this one selected, it's kind of sparse. If you have this selected, it's kind of medium. And if you have this selected, it gets a bit more, I mean, it fills up more slots basically. You have a bypass button. This particular section we will explore later when we talk about these 2 buttons right here. Anyway, another thing that you might have noticed already is that this effect is already in stereo. You don't have to create audio chains like we did for the Trance Gate. You can decide to make it stereo right within the actual plugin itself. And in my case right now, I've selected stereo linked. So anytime I press on any of these slots, whatever I do in the left slot will be copied onto the right slot. But if I turn the link off, I can then go ahead and do stuff like this, and it's completely separate. So you can achieve this kind of like almost auto-pan effects, which is pretty cool. Also, you can just keep it in mono, and this is what we get. Right next to it you have the time division. So just like the Trance Gate, this kind of decides the speed at which this sequencer moves. Next to the resolution or speed, you have the number of steps. You can also type in the number of steps, like if I type in 32, there you go, you get 32 steps. But as you can see, these are grayed out right now. That's because you need to extend the sequence up to 32, and this is a bit slow for some reason I don't understand, but anytime I drag this, it's a bit slow. Maybe it has something to do with the GPU or whatever. I'm not an expert in that. Anyway, let's get it back to 16 because I don't need a very long sequence. Let's move on to lock. So basically when you turn the lock on, you just select a few steps that you don't want to be affected, and when you turn it off, when you go and try and click on them, nothing happens. It's kind of a useful feature when you kind of like a sequence but you want to try and work on the finer details. You know that those particular steps you kind of you think they're necessary, but you want to play with something a bit different, so just in order to prevent yourself from, you know, fucking it all up basically. All right, let's talk about probably the coolest feature in this plugin, which is kind of splitting or dividing these bars into subdivisions. Right here we have some tiny little dots, and if I click on them, you get a half step, then you get kind of a two half steps together, and then if you press again, you get three 1/3 of a step, if that makes sense. With this particular feature, even if we are in stereo linked mode, you have to go ahead and do it on the left and right channel separately. But this is really cool because with the half step you get a much snappier sort of sound. Then with the two step you get this kind of like stuttery thing, and with this kind of third of a step thing you get even more glitchy sounds. So this is particularly useful for like really kind of experimental sounds, and yeah, it's pretty cool. This feature is connected to this button right here, because if we click on this, now it's set to 0, so basically this decides the sparseness of your pattern, if that makes sense. I pressed on it with a value of 0 and it kind of eliminated all of my subdivision things, but if we go and maybe select a value of 4 and we press it again, all of these steps get split. I think that if you turn it up to, I don't know, 10 or something, it gets even more and more sparse. So let me just randomize it, and yeah, you get this kind of stuff. I don't really know how it calculates this. There's no correlation between this number and I don't think any of the subdivision that actually show up in the pattern. I think it's just, you know, a random number. I mean, not random, but it goes up and then the sparsity increases, I guess. So let me select a new pattern, and maybe actually I'll turn this mode right here, and yeah, we get something like this. So let me just explain what these two do. So if I turn this button on, this is a disintegration kind of button. So you have these values right now, but in the span of 4 bars, these will gradually decrease until there's nothing left. Let me just show you. There you go. We press the random button again. If this was the disintegration button, this is the grow button. So in the span of 4 bars, but then again, we can change this, but let's just keep it at 4 for now. These values will grow. Let me just show you. And so this gradually fills in all the values. So this is a cool like sound effect tool, I guess. I never use it, but it's a tool that you have. It's pretty cool. Yeah, I'm not particularly interested in that, but the things that I'm particularly interested in are actually the simpler ones. In this case, let me just select a new pattern. So as I said, one thing that I'm particularly interested in is this particular slider. So unlike the trance gate, in which you had a fully fledged like envelope section, right here you have just a feather section. So up until now we've used this particular slider at 0%, which means that it's got the snappiest sort of attack and release that you could get. But if we turn it up, you can hear that it kind of like gets a bit more gentle, and so I'm pretty sure this is a kind of a global slider for the envelope, in which, you know, the attack gets a higher value and the release gets a higher value as well, and so it's not as snappy, it's just a bit more dreamy, if that makes sense. And this is kind of my gripe with this particular plugin. I would like to have a bit more control on the envelope, because it doesn't seem to be doing much until you get to like 90%, and then it's kind of very feathery. And kind of the same goes for shuffle, to be honest. It's not a particularly convincingly sounding swing or shuffle. I mean, even if I go to 100%, I don't really hear any shuffle. I mean, do you? Let me just put some drums in for reference so that we can see if there is any swing going on. I honestly don't hear any difference at all. The only time I actually heard any difference with this shuffle button is when I go and transform all of these in half steps, which is a bit more snappy. So this is with shuffle all the way to 0%. So when I go up to 100%, I'm expecting to hear the craziest, kind of swingiest, sort of drunkest sound possible. But in the case of this plugin, it's very, very, very subtle, and that's another limitation. So for all the great, cool features that this plugin has, I personally find myself not using it as much as I could because of these two features. But then again, you might not want or need these two features in your project, and this is still a really, really, really cool plugin. All right, so let's get to the third and final method for getting trance gates in your project. And spoiler alert, this is my absolute goat. I love this particular technique because, well, first of all, it uses a very, very simple plugin that is included in any version of Ableton. So even if you have the simplest, freest version of Ableton that you get with your like MIDI keyboard or something, you will find this particular plugin, which is just a standard gate. Also, if you don't have Ableton but you use, I don't know, Fruity Loops or Logic or Reaper or whatever, there are gates in any of these other DAWs. And I'm pretty sure all of them have a sidechain, which is the feature that we are gonna use to get that trance gate effect. So while the other two plugins are completely free, I guess this is not technically free because it comes with Ableton, and you know, you have to pay for Ableton unless you get like a free copy in some way or form. But then again, as I said, you can kind of watch this technique and apply it to any other DAW, maybe another free DAW that you might have found. Any DAW pretty much will have a noise gate built in, and hopefully they also have a sidechain. Again, we need a sidechain to make this work. Anyway, let me just show you what this sounds like without any effects. So these are the same chords as before, but I've used kind of a choir sound. So let's turn the gate effect on. And if I press play, I kind of still can hear voices. I mean, I can always hear voices in my head, but that's another discussion for another time. But anyway, the reason why we are still hearing voices is because the floor is set to -40, but we need to set this bad boy to -infinite. So now everything is being completely gate kept. I keep saying this word gate kept. I don't know if it means what I think it means, but you know what it means. I mean, it's been kept for being listened to, I guess. Anyway, the floor is all the way to the bottom, and now we need something to trigger the sidechain to make the sound come out. We're gonna go ahead and create a new MIDI track. And in this MIDI track, we're gonna drag a analog. And in this analog, we're gonna turn off oscillator 2 and filter. And we're gonna switch the shape of oscillator 1 to noise. And then we're gonna go into amp. I'm gonna turn the release all the way down. We're gonna turn the sustain all the way up. What we have right now is a simple noise. We are gonna rename this particular track sidechain trigger, and you'll see why in a second. If we go into the gate, we turn on the sidechain and we select audio from sidechain trigger. And so now if we go ahead and create whatever, like, actually let's just not draw this. Let me just go ahead and like, yeah, do something random like this. There you go. Maybe change the pattern, get more steps in, get a different density and a different step duration. So this is what this particular pattern sounds like. Very unpleasant, but don't worry, we don't need to hear this. We can turn it off. This is only our trigger for our noise gate. So now if I press play, you can see it kind of shows up in the gate plugin, but it's not quite enough to reach the threshold. So I'm going to turn the threshold down a little bit. And boom, just like magic, we have a nice trance gate. And my dear old friend envelope section is back into action. And so this is really good because we can change these values and get different types of sounds. We can get it really snappy. Or quite dreamy. Also you have a hold, which is kind of a sustain. But the real reason why I think this particular technique is the absolute goat of trance gating is because you can actually harness the full power of your piano roll. So unlike these other plugins where you have just a step sequencer which you have to turn the steps on and off, with this technique is much simpler to actually have a visual representation of the steps that you want to turn on and off. I mean, most of us are pretty much used to a piano roll. You know what a pattern sounds like on the piano roll, but also that means that you have much easier access to a bunch of cool different things like multiple time divisions, the groove pool, and different kinds of swings and shuffles, like triplets, rolls, and all the cool stuff that you can find on the piano roll. Let me just show you once again. Like, the simplest thing that you can do is just go ahead and click on narrowest and like get all of these to sound a bit more sharp, for example, a bit snappier. So this is pretty much doing the same thing as the gatelab when we split the division into halves or thirds. Now we've done exactly the same thing right here. You have a much shorter note which triggers the noise gate. So now if I go back and lengthen these notes to the original values, this is what it sounds like now. But if I select them all and shorten them, for example, this is what you get. Even this small feature is really cool because, I mean, you've heard the difference that it makes. It's pretty awesome. But then again, as I said, we can completely change this. We can turn this into a triplet grid, and we can have triplets right now, like so. And you have, multiple different kind of subdivisions and feels into one clip, which you can't do in any other plugins. Let's draw another pattern. So I open up my groove pool and I'm going to drag this particular swing 16th 73 into my clip. I make these a bit shorter. As I turn the timing down, you get no swing, but if I turn it up, you get quite a lot of swing. I'm just using the swing 16th 73, but in the groove pool right here, you have many different types of swings and grooves that you can choose from and select and try out. So another crazy thing that you can do with this is that you can draw a very long note and press Command E, and this will split it into whatever value you have your grid on. So in this case it's 16ths, so I have 1/16th note in this particular pattern. And then you can go into time warp right here, and with these selected you can play around with time warp, which is one of the best things that they have done with Ableton 12, and you can get crazy patterns like this one. Now we need to shorten these notes, otherwise we're not going to be able to hear the effect going on. But if I do that, let's just listen to it. Yeah, I love this. So when you get a bit too crazy and you warp this a little bit too much, the very first kind of notes might actually overlap a little bit in terms of when the gate opens and closes. So at first you might have like a big burst of noise, and then the gate will actually go into effect. So you might want to use something else like an LFO together with a utility to get this particular effect. But I'm getting too ahead of myself. Let me just show you. Yeah, you see, like in this particular case right here, it doesn't work all that well. But if I do it like this, this is awesome. It's great for sound design, it's great for like transitions, and it kind of works well with a beat as well. And of course, one of the great reasons why you should use this technique is that you have access to different MIDI clips, and each and every one of these MIDI clips can get completely different results. Because once again, you could have something like this on one clip, which is the time warp thingy that we just did, and you can have something much simpler into another clip. This is in triplets though, and then you can get something else entirely right here. And this is particularly useful when you're working on your project, because, well, first of all, you have easy access to any of these, easy to visualize, but also this kind of helps you, keep it different and varied, and kind of always changing in the course of your song. Let me just show you. So a couple more things about this technique. First of all, you are kind of missing a dry wet control, but once again we can fix this by creating an audio effect rack, and we create a new chain, and in this chain we have a dry and a wet. So the dry has no effects on and the wet has the gate, and we go ahead and we look at our chains, we drag this like so, create our fades, and now once again we select our macros, we map our chain selector to map number 1, we get rid of some of these macros that we don't need, and we're going to call this dry wet. So one thing that I kind of found is that unlike the trance gate, you don't lose that much volume here, but once again, if you want to get up some more volume, you could just map this particular knob to utility right after this with the gain turned on. That said, you also kind of lack the ability to play this in stereo, and in order to make this work, we need to grab this wet channel, and we need to duplicate this, and we need to send one to the left and the other one to the right. The good thing is that this channel has the same kind of chain map right here, so if we go over like this, we don't need to map it again. So we have wet left and wet right. And in order to actually hear the difference now, I'm going to change some parameters on the right channel. I'm going to turn the attack to release up, and I'm going to turn the hold down. And this particular technique is insanely cool because it kind of sounds like you're getting a gate, a very snappy gated sound on the left, and then on the right you kind of almost get like a delay or a reverb. Wow, that's insanely cool. That's awesome. Of course, you could also create another sidechain trigger, and you could call it sidechain trigger right, and call this sidechain trigger left, and then you can go again into your gate, and yeah, this is selected to be L, and this, we can change this to trigger right. And so while the left channel maybe gets triggered by this, right channel gets triggered by a different clip, like so. That's a pretty decent audio effect rack that we just created, isn't it? So let me just go ahead and maybe make this a nice color, and let me just go ahead and save this, because I want to reuse it in my projects for sure. Noise gate plus. Cool. So let me remind you that on my Patreon you will find this particular preset as well as the preset that we made for the kilohearts. You'll actually find this whole project, plus I'm going to create some more patterns that you can readily use in your projects. And with patterns I mean rhythms like this that you can easily make in your project. Once again, you don't have to go on the Patreon, you don't have to give me any money. I'm happy if you just follow the tutorial and make your own presets, but it's just looking at the things that I've shown you. But if you're lazy and you are, and you want something ready-made, yeah, give me your money. Right, so now that we have a complete overview of all three of the trance gates, I decided to actually go ahead and make a song with all of them, which explains why I'm wearing different clothes, because it took me a few days. But anyway, I have some drums here, and then I have a group, and this is actually where I'm gonna apply the trance gates. If we click on the group, you can see that we have the trance gate, the normal kilohertz trance gate right here. Then we have the noise gate plus that we've built using the ableton stock gate, etc, etc. And then we have gatelab. And if we press A on our keyboard, you can go into automation view, and you can see that at different points of the song I'm actually using different trance gates. So at this point of the song and at this point I'm using the noise gate plus. But if we go into the trance gate menu, you can see that in this section I'm actually using the kilohertz trance gate, and if we go into the gatelab section, then you can see that I'm using it right here. When we go into noise gate plus, you can see that I have a sidechain for this section right here, and then I have a sidechain, a different sidechain for this section right here. I don't know why I did that. Maybe I didn't realize that I already had a sidechain for it. Anyway, let's have a listen, shall we?
You're gonna say some
So that pretty much does it for today. Hopefully this has been a quite long but quite interesting or useful video for you. If it was, please leave a like or subscribe to the channel. Go visit my Patreon page and all the things that I've already said before. And that's it. I love you very much, and see you soon. Yeah, bye.